Alright, so we talked about the logic and rationale and some of the absurdity behind all these conspiracy theories, in particular the New World Order one. But now let's talk about the conspiracy theorists themselves. They're every bit as absurd and kooky as all these grandiose things they claim to believe. Now here's the thing. First and foremost, there are not a lot of these people out there. Granted, there's some, probably a whole lot more than you wish, but if you just kind of gauged everything you know about conspiracy theories by what you see on the internet, you would think that 98% of the planet is an Alex Jones supporter. When the reality is, no, it's not. They're actually a very small fringe community that have given themselves the illusion of prominence by incessant internet activity. More or less, these people are just nerds with no lives. They're trolls that sit around all day going on YouTube, thumbing down videos, and harassing others because it gives them the sensation of political or social activity. So yeah, basically they have nothing better to do, and they don't have anything else to do in their lives. Basically, if you just take away the conspiracy theory, if you take away this whole NWO rabble-rousing stuff from them, they don't have a point to their lives anymore. They're hopeless. What would they focus their time on? What would they have to believe in? Absolutely nothing. The fact of the matter is, if you wonder why people are into conspiracy theories, it's because they need them. It gives them a sense of heightened importance. It gives them an excuse for the failings of their own lives, and it helps them kind of mask their own miserableness. There's a great quote I found here from a guy who wrote from the New York Times named Roger Cohen, who says that conspiracy theories are the ultimate refuge of the powerless, and I am paraphrasing here. Because if you cannot change your own life, it must be that some greater force controls the world. And in that, you're seeing a lot of parallels between the whole conspiracy theory and hardcore religious communities. In fact, there's actually a lot of crossover. I apologize. They pointed a DARPA missile at me and scrambled my brain, so I couldn't say it. But we'll talk about that later. So anyway, before we start talking about conspiracy theorists and their social behaviors, let's talk about a guy named Max Weber. And he was a guy who came up with an idea called the three-component theory of stratification. And basically what that means is humans in society, we're after three things. We're after class, status, and power. And when you look at that and you look at these conspiracy theorists, you realize something. Conspiracy theorists are very, very marginalized people that don't have class, status, or power. They don't have money, they don't have popularity, and they have virtually zero social influence whatsoever. So I think really in a lot of ways all this conspiracy theory stuff is actually sort of a reaction to that marginalization process. That's kind of their way of giving themselves an individual power source through a secret knowledge that others don't have, particularly the mainstream culture, which they have an unabashed hatred of because they feel left out. More or less, that's kind of why. Unless they have like some really deep-seated political or religious extremism, which is probably the case, but like I said, more on that later. So when you look at guys like Alex Jones, and you look at guys like the Zeitgeist movement, and you look at guys like David Icke, after a while you realize that these guys are pretty much nothing more than secular televangelists. The same as guys like Jim Baker and Benny Hinn that are out, slapping people on the foreheads and telling them, the devil's been boiled out of them. They're just a bunch of hucksters. There are guys that are preying upon the sensitivities of individuals that feel very neglected. They're looking for anything in this world to hold on to. And they choose conspiracy theories, and these guys exploit the crap out of them. Alex Jones is the dude that makes millions of dollars a year off the paranoid delusions of people that really want to have some sort of, existential purpose to their lives. He's no different than, the Jack Van Impe's and who else? The Joel Osteens of the world. Actually, I know a lot of people like Joel Osteen, but, I'll talk about that. So there you go. There's just nothing more than an existential excuse. Now, let's talk about why conspiracy theories are detrimental to society. First of all, you got to talk about the illogical nature. They're very irrational. They're very ignorant. It's stretching the truth. It's promoting pseudoscience and pseudo-social science over reality. That's bad. I don't even have to say that, really. But another thing is, you got to remember, these really aren't productive people that we're talking about. These are people where just in terms of economics, they never get real jobs. They never go to college because it's a giant Illuminati conspiracy. And they rarely pay taxes because they never leave their parents' house. Now, of course, there are some successful conspiracy theorists out there, but seriously, if you do a social profile of them, these people are not really what you would call the poster boys. And it is a largely male-dominated domain, I've noticed, which might be saying something as well. They're just not very successful people. And the more people you have believing in this stuff, the more marginalized, off-the-cusp, fringe people you'll have out there. And I think the entire economy as a whole suffers. So go back to promoting ignorance and refutation of real-world dynamics. We're going to talk about that. But another thing that's really interesting to me is the whole social interaction disintegration going on here. If you look at these videos on YouTube, something very peculiar begins to become apparent. These are people that don't like to show their faces. They'll make like these really long, stupid, pointless, meandering, copyright infringing manifestos on Windows Movie Maker, but they won't actually do what I'm doing, where I'm looking you in the eye over the power of the internet and talking to you as an individual human being. That's called something called de-individuation, which is where they're losing themselves inside the giant social idea of this conspiracy theory. They're afraid to show their face. They're ashamed to be out in public. These are people that have major self-esteem issues. They're kind of afraid of their own individuality. And I think that's really bad because it's showing that they have a direct inability to communicate. And if you want to succeed in this world, you have to be able to communicate and talk to people and interact and get ideas across. And when your entire premise for life is everyone's being controlled by Martians that are pointing laser guns at all of the people that run Fortune 500 companies, you're not going to be able to do a job interview. I'm sorry, but that's just the truth. And they're becoming a whole lot more technologically dependent, and once again, you're kind of losing a sense of their own humanity, and that's kind of a bad thing as well. And of course, the reality here, and let's just call it what it is, all these people have mental disorders. There are people, that are hyper-paranoid, they have schizoid conditions, they have aggressiveness disorders, they have extreme depression. I'm not saying that all of them do, but if you set them down and you flipped open a copy of the DSM-5 and you started looking at their behaviors, and you started checking things off, you'd realize a lot of these people, they have some deep-seated psychiatric issues. And as we all know, if people don't get treated for those, bad things happen. So anyway, my conclusion of sorts here to this meandering, pointless video, which will have no effect on society whatsoever. I got this thing called the equation of doom. And that's when you have three components, you add them up, and you have really, really horrible social system results. Number one, you have to have a deep-seated animosity towards society. People that hate everything about modern culture and society. Conspiracy theorists do. You have to have hyper-paranoia, an absolute disbelief in anything, or a belief in the incredibly absurd, complete rejection of reality. Conspiracy theorists have that. And of course, you have to have a convenient scapegoat, which you use an excuse to go around doing really stupid, ill-informed things. Not that conspiracy theorists have that in the New World Order. So once you add all these things up, pardon me, once again, those the DARPA radars hitting me again. Once you have all those three added up, I think you have a perfect mixture for people to either A, not do anything productive with their lives, or B, start doing things that are really destructive with the lives of others. So let's think about it. Conspiracy theorists, there are a lot of them that are dangerous kooks. Guys like Jared Loughner, the guy that put a bullet in Gabriel Giffords' skull, who was obsessed with the Zeitgeist films in the movies that said, the NWO controls the world and the Federal Reserve System is owned by, Jewish robots or whatever it is. Same thing with Timothy McVeigh, who was a pre-internet supporter of the whole New World Order nonsense. So there's to say, people can use this as a social tool, I guess, for destruction. I'm not saying that's the case with all conspiracy theorists, but it's also quite ignorant to say, hey, there is some social interaction breakdown going on here, and it's bad. So, all of that going on. Time to make sort of an ultimate analysis here. Should we give these people, in the absence of all demonstrable evidence, with no official documentation, whose ideas are a complete smack to the face of everything we know about reality, science, and the social sciences, any credence whatsoever? Absolutely not. And here's why. These are people that don't know what causation and correlation are. These are people that think that the Sandy Hook shooting is a conspiracy orchestrated by the international banking cartel or something else equally stupid, because they looked at photos of the Sandy Hook shooting and there were clouds in the sky. Or in The Dark Knight Rises, there was a scene where Aurora showed up on screen, not the fact that there's a giant sign in Singapore or is it Hong Kong that has the word Aurora, like on the waterfront. So anyway, they see this and they automatically say that is enough proof, which has absolutely zero connection to what they're actually talking about, to believe that this grandiose thing happens. That's not just a sign of poor logic, that's a sign of cognitive development disorders, because even a 5-year-old can have a better sense of causation and correlation than that. So if you're doing that, if that's the kind of leap you're making, then you have some serious cognitive problems going on. So everything kind of gets, broken down into childish reductionism. We're adults, but we all act like children, and we believe childish things, and we use childish modes of logic and reasoning to, address things, which is always bad. And, at worst, these guys just have full-blown psychosis. I mean, really, they're, probably one delayed rent payment away from being those guys on the street you see holding signs, yelling at people on bikes that, JFK is still alive. And, never mind the fact that the rest of society, doesn't even give these ideas any support whatsoever. Think about this, when you look at something like, say, the Sandy Hook shooting conspiracy that's orchestrated by Barack Obama to take away guns. Here's the thing. There isn't a single politician in Washington, not even hardcore Tea Party people, that think that's what happened. There are no peer-reviewed journal articles or academics in the country, outside this one idiot in Florida, that thinks that's the case. There are no respectable media outlets or Fox News saying, hey, this is a conspiracy. So when you have no government documentation, no media documentation, no academic documentation, no documentation at all of what you're saying, and you claim it to be the truth when everyone else that has a whole lot more credibility than you doesn't, do the math on why we don't believe you. And so to conclude, I know what you're thinking, but old Jimbo, isn't it important to ask questions? And the answer is yes, it is very important questions, and you should question a whole bunch of things. Sorry, once again, DARPA radar. You should question everything, but there's not the most important thing that you can do. The most important thing you can do is not ask questions. What the most important thing you can do is what you choose to believe to be the answers. So yeah, it's important to ask questions, but I think it's even more important considering, the answers that you accept to be the case. Right?